Hey, folks, welcome back or welcome aboard. We are glad you're here. Let's go. Are we out there? We're still dealing with this new computer interface sort of a thing. So we
I think that was just a warning.
Okay, we just never know. You are listening to the Doc Owen Show, being brought to you basically on a Thursday night, but rebroadcast for a week all over the entire globe, which is pretty cool. It's called the internet, and we hope you need to understand one of the major objectives of this show, besides delivering truth to youth, has now become staying right underneath the radar of the social media warriors who are out to cut every inch of patriotic Christian media from going onto the air. So whatever you do not tell anyone about this show. Don't tell your friends. Don't tell your neighbors. We've got to stay. There's a certain number that we do not want to reach in terms of followers. So, it's kind of like a good fishing hole. When you find some place that's really good to fish, don't brag about it, because then the next time you go out there, there'll be boats all over the place. So the Doc Owen Show is on a mission to do our job, but right underneath the radar. So, you can tell you're really close friends, because we're not there yet. I'll tell you when we're starting to bump up against it. But when you tell your friends, for now anyway, tell them not to tell anybody. All right? Just keep it to yourself. It's the Doc Owen Show, DOCOWENSHOW. We're on the social media, and we'd like to stay there. We're on Facebook as Doc Owen Show. Twitter is a really good way to follow us. You'll get a little tweet when the broadcast goes live. We have a DocOwenShow.com, which is our own website. It's also a good place to listen to the show, as well as to check out the store, some of the merchandise that we've got out there. But just be very careful who you tell. That's all. Just kind of words to watch. We also have a free app, which is definitely outside of their radar. So that's a really good place to find us and follow us. That cannot be monitored if you listen to us directly on the app, on the Apple device or an Android device. We have apps for both of those. They've got the history of the show. They've got all of our shows. We've been at this 5 or 6 years, and very casually staying out of the way of the social media police, if you wish. And we'll talk about that a little bit more later on in the show. We always begin the show in a very traditional manner. We're down one. If you've listened to us for very long, you know that Uncle Bocce is taking a respite here after a little bit of surgery that he had, and is getting his feet back underneath him. But I'm joined in the Hilltop Studios by Miss Surefire.
Howdy.
There, say hello. Yeah, there you go.
I did.
I know. And this is Richard Doc Owen. So we always start with a real kind of traditional format. Ima gives us an inspirational quote that she has been researching the entire week to make sure she came up with just the right thing. And then I'll follow that up with, usually it's a quote from God Bless America, which are prayers and reflections for our country. That's what we're about. So, Ms. Surefire, take it away.
And tonight's quote comes from a place I've quoted from before lots of times. It's called brainyquote.com.
Oh, but not for a while.
No.
Hadn't heard from them in a while.
But I'm under the gun, finished my semester back at school.
Rock and roll.
Yep. And that's Brainy. It's BRAIN as in Nancy, quote.com.
Singular quote.
Yep.
Okay.
And tonight's quote comes from a gentleman by the name of Calvin Coolidge.
Oh, yeah. Uncle Bocce taught us about Calvin Coolidge.
He did. He was an American president. And I also thought it was apropos, just by coincidence, that he was born on the 4th of July, which is coming up next week.
Yep.
We'll be on the celebrating side. We won't be here with the show, but we'll load up
We'll come up with an appropriate show to put out there.
Yep. And
probably another 4th of July show.
There you go.
But wasn't on a Thursday.
So I thought it was pretty cool that I found his quote, and he was born on 4th of July.
Yeah, that's coincidental.
So his quote is, "Knowledge comes, but wisdom lingers. It may not be difficult to store up in the mind a vast quantity of facts within a comparatively short time, but the ability to form judgments requires the severe discipline of hard work and the tempering heat of experience and maturity."
That's a lot to think about.
Mm-hmm.
That's a lot. Say the first part of that about wisdom. Say the first part of that.
Knowledge comes, but wisdom lingers.
Wisdom lingers. Mm-hmm. Yeah, wisdom hangs around. I got it.
Yep.
I like it.
Yep.
Good job. Nice job, Mr. Coolidge.
Mm-hmm.
My quote tonight is from, as I said, a book called God Bless America, Prayers and Reflections for Our Country. And I picked the topic of justice. And we will find out why when we get into the conversation. And this is a reading from Psalms 101, number 6. My eyes will be on the faithful in the land, they that may dwell with me. He whose walk is blameless will minister to me.
Interesting.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
We have tonight another excellent conversation with our friend Nico Lahood. Mm-hmm. We cover two specific topics. One of them having to do with abortion and his R-rated Christianity video cast that he's doing on a weekly basis on Facebook. Mm-hmm. And the other is on the topic of limitations on free speech and the coming, just unbelievable onslaught from mainstream media and their cohorts in the social media realm. That being Google, the owner of YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, everything that is a household name to you is going to be very proactively filtering what you get to hear and see. And it is not going to include a lot of the alternative media information that you are used to getting. We may all have to resort to ham radios in order to get the word out. So that's an interesting conversation that we have with Nico, and I'll follow that up with some events of the day today that are very relevant to this topic. Before we get started, I thought I'd kick it off with a little musical number. And the reason that I did this is a bagpipe played by Attorney General William G. Barr at the opening of the National Conference of U.S. Attorneys. So they had the entire bagpipe or drum and pipe corps, I think they call it, or something like that, from the New York City Fire Department come down to Washington to play for this group of people. And after they had kind of done their thing and gotten everybody fired up, they hung around, and Mr. Barr is a bagpipe player, a very good one at that. So let's listen very quickly. It's about 2.5 minutes or so, but it'll kind of set the tempo for the rest of the show. So, Ms. Surefire, can you cue up Mr. Barr for us?
There you go.
Here we go.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Now, how was that for an icebreaker? A word about how that came about. Jesse and Rob and Zach thought they were going to surprise me by having the Emerald Society pipe band come down from New York. But as you know, I'm very proficient at, dare I say the word, spying. And I discovered the plot, and so this was my counter surprise.
So those of us in the Patriot movement interpreted that as a lot of things, as a signal, because that happens to be a song that pipe bands play before something very major is about to happen. That's like they're marching into war, they're marching into an event, they're about to go into something that is quite important. So they're firing up the troops with that particular pipe song. The other thing was his reference to the spying, and this being his counter attack. So that was not, I think it was a little more than just the message for the audience, because he knew it would get out there. And Attorney General Barr is extremely smart and clever in terms of what he's doing as the Attorney General for the U.S. So we've set the tone with that. Now let's dive into a fairly long conversation, but I think you'll enjoy it because we cover two topics with our friend Mr. Nico Lahood. So let's cue up Nico, and basically, as we always do, you sort of turn the show over to him.
That's
right. No matter what you might think, he's in control, and you'll be able to tell that when you hear the conversation. That fast? I'm impressed. We're having another conversation with Mr. Nico Lahood. He's an attorney. We'll put it that way.
And
really,
Doc Owens, he's a ball buster.
He's a lifestyle guy. He's our bellwether on the Christian community, and the Christian word is really, besides being an attorney.
Well, we were talking about health and life.
Yep.
and the body and how it was designed, and so it ends up getting into a discussion on intelligent design versus natural selection and stuff like that. And so if we are intelligently designed, I tell people, then whoever you think the designer is, of course, you know who I believe the designer is and know the designer is. Yeah. Whoever the designer is, would it make sense to live life and treat the machine of your body the way the designer designed it to? And the answer is yes. And so we were just having a conversation about plant-based eating and eating in GMO. And
well, what brought it up too was I asked Nico, just got back from vacation, which was probably long overdue. I don't remember you taking one when you were in PA.
It's the first one in 6 years.
I figured that to be the case. Well deserved.
Thanks, Dad.
And but he went to Costa Rica, which is an area called Blue Zone.
Yeah, Doc and I were saying that there's an area in Costa Rica that is one of the 5 or 6 blue zones in the country.
Right, and that doesn't mean that they're all Democrat.
No, that's a good one. No, blue zone. I don't know. Honestly, I need to research why they called blue zones. This day and age. I don't know why it's called blue zones. It's easy to find out, I'm sure. But what a blue zone is an area that is studied. There's actual blue zone studies.
Right.
These are areas where people historically live long lives and they have the highest rate of centurions, meaning people that live past 100.
Right.
So there's an area in Costa Rica. There's an area in California where Seventh-day Adventists live.
Really?
Because the Seventh-day Adventists have a very specific diet.
Yeah.
It's plant-based, very legume-heavy.
Yeah.
And the Okinawans have it. We have the Hunsa people in the Himalayan mountains. We have a place outside of Naples, Italy. That's another area that is considered
blue. We need to go see.
Yeah, right. That's how this conversation came up.
Okay, that would be interesting.
And Doc looks good for his age.
Yeah.
Shit, man.
Nico's wasted away. He's plant-based, man. We need to put some meat on his back on his bones. Okay, question for you.
Yes, sir.
I know we'll start with what's I think current on your mind.
Okay.
Because of your R-rated Christianity
podcast or
podcast meeting or whatever it is that's going to go on tonight is about abortion.
It is.
So I know that's kind of sitting right in front of you right now.
It's sitting in front of society too.
Okay.
I mean,
so
tell me
where you're coming from.
Well, we're coming from a biblical truth position, so
right.
I don't want to give too much. I mean, the promo. Well, we can talk about it because by the time this airs, it's going to be already over.
That's true,
right? I think about it. So the promo is, and not word for word. Abortion is a hot topic in today's society today. Someone told me, and they did at some point, that Jesus was pro-choice. Is that true? Was he pro-choice? Let's continue this discussion on Thursday at R-Rated Christianity. Let me see your comments below. And the comments have started.
Okay.
And so it's a discussion within the church.
And by the way, it's a live broadcast on Facebook.
Correct.
Correct?
Correct.
Okay.
We have just made it to iTunes, I guess someone told me.
Yep.
And so we're on there now.
Okay.
And we're behind. I mean, this is episode, I don't even know, 6 or whatever it is. But we got back to conversations like this. As you know, Doc, I mean, we started with a conversation. We got into a little bit of scholastic with my buddy George, who, if you've seen him, he's just amazing. His mind is insane. Genius, literally.
And you do them on Thursday nights.
That's right. And I'm sorry.
Good.
I'm sorry. You would have told me, I would have just scrapped the whole damn thing. Forget about it, man. I'd rather watch the Doc Owen show and watch us on replay. How about that?
That's why I'm a podcaster, so I pick them up on video games. That's the whole thing.
And so we really, last week, if you saw it, Doc, we went back to this very non-commentary, conversational piece where I believe we can teach within the conversation versus have a conversation versus teach and then have a conversation after. It's a very slight distinction, but people really feel engaged to the especially when it's live too.
And a good term for it is instruction.
There you go.
It's instructional.
There you go.
Rather because teaching calls up this attitude of a lecture.
There you go.
And instructional is more to involve the student.
Well, but that's how people take some things. Yes. Am I at a college course or am I?
Our conversations are instructional to the audience.
And if someone learns something from it, which then I think that's wonderful.
Absolutely.
So like I tell people, we're going to muddle through this. I'm not a podcaster, a webcaster, any caster. I'm technologically challenged. I don't email much at all. I just started to because I have to, but I text and I'm I'm a crappy politician. I'm a husband, a child of God.
If you send him an email, what he does is
I don't even know what the hell.
Around the office, he just gets up and walks over and says, "Now, what are you trying to say?"
Yeah. Well, nobody emails me here, Daddy. I mean,
they don't. You don't.
But even my email, my personal, my business email,
right?
One of the girls checks it.
It's
not even me.
I know.
I'll look at it when they say, "Hey, by the way, look at this."
Nico says.
Yeah, exactly. From his own email. So there will not be an email scandal from Nico Lahood, I promise you. I assure you.
Well, if there is, you will not have been the author of it.
Yeah, it'll be a setup. But abortion, I believe, is a critical issue for our country. It's a critical issue for the church because the church, either, in my opinion, either is confused or does not have the courage we're called to have in Scripture and that Jesus model does. It's not even a close issue. It's not open for interpretation.
No.
And we need to be able to talk about it. We need to be able to talk about it and take the name calling and the yelling. And so what we're going to talk about tonight is my journey in the first of 3-part series because we're going to flesh this out.
Yeah.
Is my journey through abortion. So you find out where you really stand on issue. Not that I had an abortion or that I knew someone that had an abortion, meaning my opinion on it. Thank you.
Okay.
You should have seen Doc's face like, what the hell? No, I mean my opinion through it. So in 2010, when I ran for office the first time, you have these come to Jesus talks.
Well,
you better know where you stand on issues.
That's when when I was thinking about running for office at one point in time. I confronted myself with the issues.
Well,
that
all
I knew
issues,
I would be confronted with.
Yeah, all issues.
Right.
And so,
that's definitely one of them.
And I'll tell you this, and I can't speak for you. I'll just tell you where I was thinking at the time in 2009, leading up to 10. I was well into my walk. Mm-hmm. Obviously, not as much as I am today.
Correct.
I had an understanding, but I had not analyzed these issues because I wasn't forced to. So I looked for any reason or any way that I could biblically justify being pro-choice.
Okay.
Because it's an easier position to take. Because pro-choicers, let's just say it, are a little harsher than pro-lifers.
Yes.
They are. I mean, they'll call you names, they'll marginalize you.
It's the difference today between liberal and conservative.
Well, you might get a pro-lifer, some dumbass that doesn't know how to handle it right. And they'll call you a name and protest out of an abortion clinic. Right. Okay, I got it. I don't consider Westboro Baptist and not even Christian, so they don't count. Yeah. I don't put them in our category. But pro-choicers really get down into the weeds with you, calling you names, just really labeling and marginalizing you, not respecting your opinion, name calling you into quote unquote submission. And so I really tried to justify biblically being pro-choice. And most people end up in Deuteronomy 30:19 and somewhere in there 15 to 20. In Deuteronomy, it says, this choice that God gives us between life and death. Now he's talking about the polytheistic society. There's other gods. There's the only true God, Yahweh. And then he talks about life with him and then death through somebody else. Okay. And you have to make a choice. But in verse 19 it says, I lay before you a choice between life and death. Choose life. Now that gets bastardized in different ways. So people that are in the Christian worldview that want to justify pro-choice say, see, God is pro-choice. Free will is you having a choice. Well, no kidding. But the instruction is, first of all, it's not dealing with abortion.
No,
it's choose life. In all your decisions, life.
Sure.
Now that does not apply to the death penalty. This is where people go off the reservation. That's a different discussion.
They've made their choice.
Well, it's not even that. The death penalty analysis is the analysis between innocent life and life that has made a choice to get them in that situation. So when you talk about thou shalt not kill in the
we all know there are consequences for our actions, or we should.
Well, absolutely. So, that's a biblical worldview. Right. So thou shalt not kill, as we know, if we do any amount of study, in the Hebrew is thou shalt not murder. Hebrews 6:16, which is part of the discussion for tonight, is one of the 6 things God hates. One of them is the spilling of, innocent blood.
Yes.
Not the spilling of blood.
No.
Because Ecclesiastes 3 tells us there's a time for everything under the sun, including a time to kill. Yeah. Never a time to murder. So there's never a time to spill innocent blood.
There's 2 different words for it,
Well, yes, but you mishandle. This is the mishandling within the church. Yeah. And this pacifism that is trying to take over the church because we're afraid, it seems, to be called names on Facebook or Twitter or some crap. And instead of just properly handling the word of truth in a loving but bold and humble, gracious but courageous way, and those are hard ways to do it all at one time.
Yes.
But I mean, and just talk. It's not my opinion. This is not my opinion. Doesn't matter. It's God's opinion.
This
to
is
me.
well, as we say in academia, we quote others. In other words, this is based on the research. This is what I found.
Right.
And, it's honest research, and these are the results of it.
That's right.
Not necessarily, but I always, when I was thinking seriously about it, I had come up with what was basically a cop out, rather than do all of that that you're.
It's a lot of work to analyze this, right?
There was a lot of work to it.
I mean, I didn't just come to this opinion overnight.
Mine basically, and I still somewhat feel that way. Mm-hmm. Is that as a male, mm-hmm. I'm not sure I'm qualified to. That's a
false argument, Doc. Don't fall for that one. That's a BS. So, do you have an opinion about rape?
Yeah.
Well, you're not getting raped. Men can get raped. Do you have an opinion about theft if you've never had anything stolen from you? Do you have an opinion about murder, even though no one's been murdered in your family? I mean, it's a false argument.
Okay.
So just because you're making a principle-based, moral decision based off of what we call God's laws, because we're a Christian, we live under the banner of Christianity.
Subsequently, by the way, I do have an opinion.
Right, I know that. I figured. I'm sorry, Doc.
That's okay. No,
people.
You're right.
But guess what?
I wanted to put it out there for
the secular world throws that in our face, and we don't know how to handle it.
Yeah.
We don't know how to handle it. That's not right. I mean, look, we can look at biblical principles and have an opinion, God's opinion, on almost everything. And if God does not speak to something directly, then we use biblical principles to apply to a situation. It's that simple.
So we're...
Go ahead.
Nice.
Oh, thanks. He's going to steal my table now. He likes my desk.
Well, no, I like his little leather pad, but it's built... I can't steal it. He built it into the desk.
I did.
So, no, I'm a heartbeat guy. That's...
Well, brother,
from
look,
that point forward.
I'll do the full analysis with you, and let me start from a second.
I don't want to get into your podcast. I don't want to.
Well, but it's after, like I said, so it's okay. Let's talk about it now. Let's start from a secular analysis. I'm going to shelf my Christianity for a moment. So, if someone murders a woman who's pregnant, they are charged with capital murder. Do you know why?
The baby.
But what do you mean, the baby?
Well, I mean, there's a life.
Okay, not just a life. Because some people say, well, because you murdered two people. Well, that's true. That would qualify as capital murder. And that's a strong argument for where I'm heading to anyway. But the Penal Code is even more specific. The Penal Code says that you murdered a child under 10. The Penal Code acknowledges, if anybody murders a 1-month-old, a 2-year-old, an 8-year-old, if they murder a child under 10, you are charged with capital murder. Okay? So the Penal Code doesn't say you murdered two people, even though that would be a strong argument, by the way, right?
Right.
It says you murdered a child under 10.
Okay.
You're a child in the womb, but nonetheless you're a child under 10 years old.
Wow.
So, and that means that person can pay with their life.
Right.
The prosecutor can seek the death penalty if it's appropriate.
Right.
So if I believe, remember, my Christianity is still shelved. If I agree with the Penal Code, and I happen to agree as a secular mindset, I agree with the Penal Code. And if I believe just the analysis that that's a child in there, under 10 years old. Now, the second aspect of that analysis, I have to say, okay, Nico, if you believe there's a child in there, is there ever a good reason to end the life of an innocent child?
Right.
I'm not even talking about Christianity. So let's talk about it from a secular, atheistic, agnostic, whatever worldview you went to. If the answer is yes, well, then you're in a slippery slope. Yep. Because then now you can end the life of a 3-year-old that you can't afford, or a 2-year-old that's a pain in the ass, or a 2-month-old that cries too much.
And laws have been passed that say exactly that.
Not passed, almost passed in Virginia. Passed. Right? You can have the baby, keep
proposed.
It comfortable.
So
proposed, yes. Proposed. Almost passed.
Yeah.
So in New York,
just the fact that they're proposed to me is like.
Well, I mean, I'm trying not to use the strong language that I want to use, because you're not an R-rated show, mine is. But what I'm saying is, it's strong language. It's a character flaw. It's a stain on this country. It really, really is when you think about this. So now we have due date abortions in New York. Mm-hmm. So my wife was born at 6 months. She was a preemie.
Wow.
At 6 months. We know what an abortion looks like. So when I'm going through my analysis, okay, and by the way, I didn't even give you my Christian analysis, right? So I gave you a secular analysis, and we still have to go through that discussion of, is there ever a good reason to end the life of an innocent child if we believe there's a child? That's where it comes down to.
Sure.
Do you believe it's a child or a gob of glue?
That's exactly right.
And if it is just a bunch of cells, then why are you harvesting the organs?
Right.
there's another question we have to ask ourselves, at least as a society, because that happens, and why Planned Parenthood got into all that controversy, because they're selling the parts.
Well, they should.
So you have all that issue. Now, from a biblical worldview, I've given you Deuteronomy. We have the Ten Commandments: Thou shalt not murder, not kill. We have Proverbs 6:16. We have Psalm 139. That God knew you in your mommy's womb, the hairs on your head, you're being formed. Mm-hmm. So the Bible is speaking to the value of the child, or of this thing in a mommy's womb. You have Jeremiah 1:5. That I knew you in your mommy's womb. So not only are you being formed, I knew you and had a plan for you. So you are planned. God planned for you in your mommy's womb. This is what we call the Imago Dei, right? The image of God is in us. This is why even someone who's not a Christian has value to a Christian, because even though you don't accept Christ as your Savior, you were made in the image of God, the Imago Dei. Imago Dei, the image of God. That is on all of us. It is on all of God's creation. Now, we are not all God's children. That's a separate analysis under Romans 8:14. But we are all God's creation for sure, that He wants. Yes. He wants us to want to be adopted by Him.
Yes.
And so we have this image. And so you have the biblical justification that actually matches up with a secular analysis that happens to be biblical in nature. And they merge well together, right? Yeah. And so I just can't justify logically how I, as a Christian, for sure, can be pro-choice, anything other than the fact that that's a child and has an infinite value in a mommy's womb.
I'm glad to hear all that, and I know the audience is too, and I will tell you, as a non-lawyer, without a legal background, I have always approached the law from a perspective of, did it make logical sense based on my Christian background? Mm-hmm. And I always expected it to. Right. And it may be because of our Christian background in this country that I always expect that the law will respect the
law was
the
influenced.
Yeah,
it was influenced
right.
by it.
There are times when it doesn't, and those are at least.
I don't know when that is, but I mean.
Well, they're out there.
Okay.
I mean, there's some that.
It's a different discussion.
They've gone onto the slippery slope. You brought up something that was the next thing I wanted to ask you about.
Okay.
Because I know you could go on and on.
Oh, I promise you, that's intermission.
That's just the tip.
Which
of the
I might
iceberg.
have to ask for intermission. I'm shaking over here. If you can't see, I got to pee like a racehorse. I had my afternoon coffee. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Go.
Can we take a break?
Yeah, we can take a break.
Man, look at this guy.
Before the break, I want to clear something up.
Sure.
Imago Dei.
The Imago Dei.
Is it DEI? Is it Latin?
It's Latin.
Okay.
Yeah.
For some reason, the way.
The Imago Dei.
Okay, we'll look it up.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned Planned Parenthood. That brought something to mind that I wanted to ask you about.
Sure.
There is Planned Parenthood was all of that stuff about selling the body parts and all of that jazz. What really exposed them was a group called Project Veritas, which is an independent media. I mean, these guys they're death on things that shouldn't be happening, and their ability to get underneath it and bring it to the surface. Are you aware that they have recently done the same thing to Google?
No.
Yes, very recently, within the last few days. So what they've done is they came up with a tape, they published it, et cetera, which is their.
Where would I watch it at?
Well, you can't see it on YouTube. That's why because YouTube is owned by Google, and they posted it out there, and Google wiped it. So you can go to projectveritas.com and see the video.
VERITAS?
Yep, just like it sounds.
Okay.
Well, what they found out was that Google internally has made the decision ever since the 2016 election not to have what they refer to as another Trump situation in 2020. And they are greatly restricting everything with all of their services. Yeah. We've known they've been wiping.
I heard they're doing that with vaccines issues, with all kinds of stuff.
You can type in vaccines, and they're going to bring up from their search engine nothing but the positive about the vaccine to support vaccinations because that's their position.
Sure.
They're doing so. They've been working with artificial intelligence. They're working very hard to not allow Trump to win, to skew the information that people get, and they're huge.
But this
Facebook's
is
doing
scary
the same
stuff.
thing.
People need to be scared
That's
out of their
reason why-
wits.
Yes.
They need to be scared because if you can do
This
it,
is
and I
huge.
believe that the president said this at some point, if they can do it to someone, a Trump
Yeah.
or a Republican, then somebody can do it to a Democrat or an independent or
Oh, yeah.
somebody else, a male, female,
Oh,
whatever. Again, it goes back to the thing that you've heard me say many, many times. Be careful of the world you help create, because someday you may have to live in it. Think about that. Let that sink in. So many times you stand up for a principle, what's right, or the world that you want, and that, ironically, was the nucleus, one of the foundational principles of the Democrat Party.
Yep.
Free speech.
Yeah.
Live and let live. Hey, I disagree with everything you're saying, Doc, but I will fight tooth and nail for you to have the right to say it.
Agreed.
Because I want you to fight tooth and nail for me to have the right to say what I want to say.
Correct.
Liberal arts.
Correct.
I mean, this whole free speech movement was championed by Democrats at one point.
Oh, of course it was.
I mean, this is what drives it. For me, who came out of politics in that umbrella, under that umbrella, but in a different era. And I mean, look, Bill Clinton today could not win in the Democrat Party. The Bill Clinton of the past.
No, he could not.
Because the things he said, even Obama in 2008 couldn't win today. I mean, that is to
How
me
far it's gone.
crazy to me.
Yes.
That is why when I left the Democrat Party, I called it a hijacking.
Yes.
The party was hijacked.
Yeah.
I didn't say, oh, the
Well-
party left me, I didn't lose the party, all that crap. Okay, I get it. There's other people in public service that have used that line. That's not what I believed. I believed it was something more. It's truly a hijacking, because when you have people that are called or looked at as beacons of a certain umbrella or platform,
Yes.
Reagan is the beacon of the platform of the Republican Party, right? And I mean, a lot of people think that. I'm
Yes.
just saying.
Well,
That's a different discussion.
He's recent history. There's a lot of people still alive who remember
Sure.
Reagan.
But I'm
he
just
gets
saying
credit.
that people use
Yes.
Obama in 2008
Yes.
because that was historic, and it was historic.
Totally.
And Clinton as these beacons,
actually,
JFK. These people, none of those three, not the Obama of 2008, not the Bill Clinton of any of the 8 years,
No.
and not none of them could get elected by a primary today. They
Oh
can't.
no, they couldn't get through it. No.
That Ocasio lady would beat all of them.
Yes.
Isn't that insane? No, let that sink in.
No. You know.
That's crazy.
She did say, thankfully, that there were too many candidates in the race for president, so she was going to wait till 2021.
Good. It's too easy. It's too easy, right? It's too easy.
Yeah. So.
It's too easy. But it really, it truly is
Well,
a
the
battle.
Big Brother aspect. I mean, it's very.
Well, brother,
it's-
but this is a
what do we-
battle of ideologies, Doc. This is not a battle of parties anymore.
No,
This is truly a battle of ideologies.
we got good and evil on the surface now.
Well, all you got
It's
to
always been there, but now it's on the surface. Now it's where
It's real stuff.
the natural we can see it.
Well, this is why I continue to do what I do.
Yes, sir.
I don't want to go off into the sunset. That's not what my calling is. Well, I want to provide for my family. I want to do it humbly, but I'm not afraid to stand for something that I believe that the Lord wants me to stand for my kids' sake and my future grandkids' sake.
Since
look,
my
that,
20s, I knew I was not going to sit on the porch.
well, brother, it keeps me up at night, Doc. You know my personality, and
Yes,
you can
sir.
tell that I do
Yeah.
my research. I don't watch TV. My TV is research time or nighttime when the kids go to bed, and I'm watching YouTube and reading and doing this and talking to my buddy George, who leads me in a direction of something, and then I do my own research. And I'm constantly preparing my mind and my spirit, my mind, mood, and emotions, my soul, for these societal battles, for these principle battles that I need to model for my kids. I can't tell them, hey, do as I say. I need to tell them, do as I did, like Jesus said to us. Because that's when he lived it out. And so I talked about this in the Bible study, and I said this at the podcast last week. If you were watching, you probably weren't because you don't watch my shows. That's fine. But I said,
a dejected Nico Doc is not one you want to go through.
No, I'm teasing with him. I like busting my buddy's chops. But we always say, practice what you preach, right?
Mm-hmm.
We need to change that. don't practice what you preach. Preach what you practice.
Yeah, so it's upside
So
down.
I don't want to talk
There's
about
a
it
lot of
until I
things
have a
that are
history of
upside down.
walking it and living it. So if we practice what we preach, that means we've been saying something for a while, and now we're practicing it. But if you turn the mindset to let's preach what we practice, that means I've been living a lifestyle and I've been living for principles for some time. And now, because I have consistency in that, I'm going to preach it.
Right.
It's a statement against hypocrisy. It's a statement of sincerity and transparency and consistency. And we need to move towards that more, in my opinion.
So what do we do about this Big Brother thing? What do we do?
Educate.
But
educate.
Well,
The power is in
like
the
you're
people
doing
still.
through the. But I'm glad you're on iTunes, because if you're, or not if, when your voice becomes big enough on your podcast,
that's the Lord
when you
leads,
get X number of followers, you're gonna be taken off of Facebook. You know that.
Well, I'm sure. I have no idea.
Well, they'll X-rate you.
Okay.
All right.
Well,
which means you got to have it on your own platform. You got to.
Well, this is why I support people like Jordan Peterson.
Okay.
Here's a guy that is out there talking. He defends biblical principles, and from a position, he's not an all-in Christian. I mean, his 12 rules for life, they're all biblical rules. I mean, it's interesting that he borrowed from the Bible, which is great. But he's explaining it from a psychological point of view. I've said this before. I said it on our podcast. You've heard me say it on your show, that the church has forgotten that the mind is a tool of worship.
Okay.
And we've got to meet people in the mind. It's
Yes.
not, because I said so. I don't believe in fairy dust or Tinkerbell. Bill Maher tries to make fun of Christians that we believe in whatever. He's full of crap. I would love to debate him, not on his show, on a neutral platform.
Yeah.
I doubt he would take it, but he can. His little one-liners and sound bites won't go far with me, but we can do it. But
you can throw him back if you need to.
well, I will, but he's got a lot of charisma, and he's an intelligent man. I would love to find out why is he such opposed, because it fascinates me.
He's not stupid.
No, not at all. The guy's a brilliant guy, and he's a wonderful marketer,
Yep.
and he's funny at times. I mean, even though some of
Yes.
the stuff irritates the crap out of me, he makes me. I'll chuckle at him.
He's got a good punch.
Yeah, he's funny, man. He's a funny guy. But I would love to use those talents for the truth.
Yes.
For me, I mean, as a strategist and as someone that understands and has studied this stuff.
But is there any way that let's just take Bill Maher for example, but as an example of others, I get the feeling that sometimes there's folks with an alternate truth. They believe just as strongly in what they're saying.
If they're sincere,
You
I
know
will
what I'm
always
saying? Am I saying it correctly?
Yes.
I mean,
look, I will always
not the name
engage.
callers,
No.
but they're just
Not the soundbiters.
no, sir.
I mean,
but
we're
their
talking
heels
about.
are dug in, and they firmly believe something that I would know to be absolutely incorrect.
But here's the deal: truth has to prevail. Objective truth, not relative truth. It has to prevail. I don't care what your
And
opinion
there's one
is.
truth.
Well, there's just truth about certain things. Regardless of what your opinion is on gravity,
Mm-hmm.
if I drop my phone, if I let go of my phone
Yes.
and there's nothing underneath it, it's going to hit the floor.
Right.
And the higher it is off the ground, the
more
more it's going to
damage.
break. Okay?
Yeah.
That's the truth. So let's say we're up here on the 5th floor in my office, right?
Right.
And let's say that there was a window that could open here.
Right.
And I said, hey, Doc, I can fly. No, you can't, Nico. No, I really can fly. In my mind, I'm a bird. I'm Superman. Superman's real. It's not just a whatever.
Okay.
And I can fly. Nico, regardless of what you think,
Cut
you're going
back on the plants.
You're going to get too much plants on your back. You're going to have a very rude awakening on the reality of gravity.
Yeah.
Regardless of what you think. This is what life's about. We can't all be right, Doc. We can all be wrong. We just can't all be right. And so I will engage with anyone
Wait a minute.
who's...
We can all be wrong, but we can't all be right? Is
Yeah.
that what you said?
You can't all be right.
Okay.
You can't... If you think 2 plus 2 is 5, and I think 2 plus 2 is 6, we're
Right.
both not... We can't both be right. We happen to both be wrong.
You're right.
We can't both be right.
Okay.
And so all I'm saying is all the worldviews out there, they can all be wrong. They truly can. But they just can't all be right. You can't say that Islam, Hinduism, Buddhism, agnosticism, Taoism, Shintoism, Christianity, all the denominations within Christianity, all the different sects of Islam, you guys are all right. No, we're not, because we all have just tremendously different points of views and worldviews.
Right.
On the surface, we might seem to be similar on some things, but we are fundamentally different.
Yeah.
We cannot all be right. We can all be wrong, and there could be something else that's correct.
Right.
We can't all be right.
No, I would agree with that.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Okay. So you don't know the answer to how
To-
Big Brother.
No,
We gotta educate.
no. I think the answer is the power is in the people. I mean, even in Christ's day, I mean, Pilate and the Roman, I mean, they were afraid of the people. The leaders in the church, and Caiaphas and all the church leaders, and the Sanhedrin and the
Well,
Pharisees
this
and the
call-
Sadducees,
at
they were afraid of the power of the people because they had influence. So when you can influence the people, Trump won because of the power of the people, not because of the power of the establishment or the power of the media. It was the people.
Well, when I pointed it out at the time, there was a real change, an earth-shattering change, when JFK got elected, and that was he knew how to use this new thing called television, and that really is what put him over. All right.
Yeah.
Trump's the same way. He
Oh,
knew
he's
how to
such a-
use this thing called social media, and that's how he got it out to the people. But that's what they're now cutting off.
Well, that we're trying to. Yeah, that's exactly right.
Very, very.
And
that's
so
why
what
they're trying
you
cut
have
it
to
off.
do is you have to get some people with resources to start another Facebook, another outlet, or more than one outlet. So all you're doing is you're going to spread this out more. And instead of, we became over-dependent. We have a monopoly now. This is where it's always dangerous.
Yes.
When you have
Oh,
Facebook,
we have a serious
Twitter,
monopoly.
we have whatever, these Instagram. I mean,
Yes.
this is the problem with a monopoly. I like, look in our city. We
Yes.
have one rag magazine
Yeah, we
that
talked
calls
about
itself a
that.
paper.
Right.
It's not a paper. It's
It's
not
not
objective.
just our city. That's
It's not-
most cities now.
It's not journalism. There's no
No,
competition.
no way. It's-
There's no motivation or checks and balance to get it right. They say, look, I'm going to turn it into an opinion column, and we're going to control.
Because this is what sells. Because
That's right.
Right.
So
Okay.
it's an ideology that runs these things.
So then it's a matter of getting the word out about the alternative resources.
Yes.
Is what you're saying.
And then build them up.
Yeah. Quickly.
Well, yes. I mean, the good thing is
Quickly.
the
It's the
evidence
challenge.
speaks for itself, and in the end.
Yeah.
I mean, look, people. There's certain people, not a lot of people, thank God,
I'm
but a
planting
certain
a
amount
seed
of
for
people.
you. You know that, right?
Huh?
I'm planting a seed in here for you
Thank you.
because of your video. Because of where
Oh,
you're
well, you know, look, it's going to go. We can't even boost certain things because of certain topics. So I know what you're talking about. They were educating me the other day about it. And I said, well, this is ridiculous. And it's not about me. But look, it's about...
No, it's not about you.
It's not about me.
It's
It's
about
about
the
the
word you're trying to
conversation.
spread.
Yes.
They don't like it.
When I talk to young people, I spoke to...
They're afraid of it.
I'm going to speak to some young people tonight at church. It's this high school group. And I'm going to challenge them. Look, whatever you believe, be able to tell me why. That's all I say.
Exactly.
Don't give me a soundbite. Don't tell me what somebody else said. Just like
And by
a
the way,
Christian.
no matter what the answer to that is, no matter what the why is, that's okay. Because you've thought it through.
Well, it may or may not be okay.
Well, but
if
you
someone
thought it
tells
through.
if someone tells me it's okay to beat a woman for insubordination, that's not okay. You understand? I'm being real specific on you, Doc. I'm sorry. I'm a
I know,
lawyer.
but what I'm saying is that I would appreciate the fact that they
Articulated,
thought it through.
thought it through,
And
critical thinking,
and
which we
then
don't
you
teach
can
anymore.
work with that.
That's right.
That you can discuss.
Then we can work backwards and see
Is how
if we
you
can
got
use
it.
that same
That's what
critical
I meant.
thinking to get there. Yeah.
Right. Then you can have a conversation. It's not because someone so told me.
No, or it's cool or this or
Yeah.
that. I mean, you know,
Because Freddie does it.
Freddie.
I don't know, but it's peer influence.
Oh yeah, exactly. Yeah, my pop used to tell me that well, if everybody jumps off a mountain, you're gonna go do a jump off a mountain too. I was like, no, Pop. I was like, okay.
My mother's favorite phrase was, "Yeah, I got a good idea. Let's all go down to the Brazos River and jump off the bridge."
That's right. Yeah, 'cause everybody else does it.
Yeah, she was like, that was her favorite. Yeah, come on, let's go.
Yeah, but that's our society right now. Nobody wants to be different. Everybody wants to fit in. Everybody
Yeah.
wants to fall in line.
Yeah.
And look, we were made individuals by God. We all have that unique marker on our finger called the fingerprint that's unique, and no one has. There's not one duplicate of it. And so we need to be our unique expression of the same truth, in my opinion. There's truth. This is a different topic, but I'm just going to leave this little point here. It's fascinating to me when I was having this discussion with this young person in this one group setting who claimed to be agnostic. He didn't know if he was atheist or agnostic. Really didn't know the difference.
Right.
But we kind of figured that he was agnostic after I asked him some questions. And I challenged him, and he couldn't deny it. I said, whenever biblical or Christian philosophy or ideologies are violated in your world, it offends you. And he thought about it, and we used examples of he was a young person that was about to get married, and they didn't have kids yet. But I said, look, if your kid were to walk in and call your soon-to-be wife the C word and tell her to go F herself, would that bother you? So if that kid didn't honor his mom and dad, would that bother you? Sure, it would bother you. If that kid or if somebody stole your laptop or your car, would that bother you? Sure. If somebody tried to murder you or murder your spirit or rape your wife or anything, would that bother you? Sure it would bother me. I mean, so you go down these biblical principles. If someone lies about you and bears, as we say, false witness, and lies, and just literally lies, we call it defamation of character, it's a lawsuit, and lies about you, tries to ruin what you're accomplishing, whether in school or in business or in your personal life or all the above, and it's an outright effing lie.
Right.
Would that bother you? And the answer is yes. Well, these are all biblical principles that if they are done and violated against even someone that claims to be agnostic, they violate this something in you.
Right.
This some sense of what's right and wrong in you.
Yeah.
That we agree on, by the way. We just disagree on who's the source. Fascinating, right?
Yes.
He said, let me think about that. I said, please do. And then I gave him my contact.
I just wrote it down. It's a good place for us to pick up next time.
Okay, well then write it down.
I did write it down.
Cool. Yeah.
So we can cut it up. All right. I hope you enjoyed that. I know we enjoyed having a conversation, and I think it came out pretty well. Nico is always thought-provoking, challenging, and, just a real bright young man to talk to on a number of different... We haven't found a subject yet that we couldn't talk about and have an intelligent conversation, no matter where we stood on the matter. And we push back on each other once in a while. So, I finished up talking with him, and I brought the topic up about the coming Gestapo effect on social media and how quickly it was happening. This is in the news today, and it is being put out there on a site called blabber.buzz, as well as the Daily Caller, as well as the Daily Wire, as well as, let me see some of these other places that it was, the Washington Examiner, Hot Air. So it's on the alternate media, but not necessarily the mainstream media, and that stands to reason. In a statement, this is a statement from Twitter that came out today, the 27th. Quote, in the past, we've allowed certain tweets that violated our rules to remain on Twitter because they were in the public's interest. But it wasn't clear when and how we made those determinations. To fix that, we're introducing a new notice that will provide additional clarity in these situations and sharing more on when and why we will use it. And this goes on to quote, gee, I wonder who they could possibly have in mind with that new policy. So all of the referrals to this new policy are the fact that they're going to try to silence or at least diminish the effect or impact of President Trump. You heard me tell or remind Nico that the reason that they decided that John F. Kennedy won the election when he did it was because he was effective using television. And that was a real turning point in which we now today have complete oversaturation of television with political ads all during the campaign, no matter what the campaign. But Kennedy was very effective in the televised debates. He came across as charismatic and as a leader, and Nixon came across very stiff, all right, and, reserved. Trump changed it again. He moved it from television to social media. Okay. Think about that. They're going to be silencing all of us. They're going to make it very hard to find the truth. Rut-row. Time to go. You have been listening to the Doc Owen Show. Thank you so much for having us. We really appreciate it. Now go out there this week and take care, pay attention, and God bless.
Bye-bye, folks. God bless.